General in charge of urbanization, human settlement and housing at the Rwanda Housing Authority, Eddie. And then Eddie will reintroduce the whole of his panel. Over to you, Eddie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. And again, good afternoon. I believe he has simplified my role here. I was wondering how I'll be handling a group of people who are still digesting, because you're within this session for, to digest what we are hearing, we've learned here, as well as, the lunch that we've just had a while ago. So, the session I'm going to moderate is to do with the construction technology. You're very much aware that really construction technology has a very big role in terms of advancing the industry, creating innovations around it, and the more efficiencies in our construction industry. And definitely on affordable housing, construction, looking at the value chain of affordable housing, indeed, when it comes to construction, that's where everybody would be interested in seeing the product that we're talking about here. So several innovations have been put in place right away from the construction side, the construction technology. And we know in the morning, our colleague, the DG at Rwanda Housing Authority, presented to us the forms of technologies that we have on ground and in the market, which have been actually approved by Rwanda Housing Authority. So I feel privileged now this afternoon to, again, welcome, pick out some of those key technologies that we see that are still effective and are leading us to more cost-efficient delivery. So with me is the microphones are also getting tired. Thank you. With me is a team of panelists that I will be inviting here one by one to come to the floor. They will introduce themselves as they come on. We have Enrico Moriero, the Managing Director for SCAT Consulting Limited. You've heard much about SCAT since morning. And next is Christian Benimana. I don't see him around, but if he is, let him join us. A Senior Principal and Managing Director, Mass Design Group. Or if he has a representative around here, welcome. The other is George Dinga, Managing Director for Next Gen Developers. And finally, the lady on the panel, Gayatri Datan, co-founder and CEO of Earthenable. You're all welcome. So Christia is also here with us. You're welcome. I'll be the one to stand. I respect you, at least the old men. It's now time for the old men in the room to sit. So again, I'll just, as I said earlier on, I'll just address one simple question to the team. And of course, I'll allow them to introduce themselves and tell us what they've been doing and the technologies that they are working on, and sort of the background of the challenge and how they came to innovate to address this challenge, the affordable housing challenge in Rwanda. So I'll give a chance to everybody, starting with Enrico to take us through. Thank you.
Maybe I yes, now it's working. Okay, let's do this. Good afternoon. So my name is Enrico. As Edito said, I'm the managing director at SCAT. I've not been there for too long, so what I'm talking about today is also something that has been set up by people before me. One of them is here. So I'm trying to summarize a bit of the history of the project. SCAT is working for the Swiss Development Corporation. The project is called ProEco. It's actually designed to create employment by the production of sustainable construction materials. So this is what exactly SCAT is doing. In this research, the clay bricks were identified one of the most suitable construction material in Rwanda, given the availability of clay. And on top of that, some more research was put identifying which type of construction technology could have been applied using the clay bricks and which type of clay bricks. So what now SCAT within ProEco is trying to do is to promote the efficient production of construction materials, a typology of bricks that allows for a cheaper and more, even faster construction technology to build multi-storied buildings. And at the same time, we're also supporting the city of Kigali and the government of Rwanda identifying implementation mechanisms that can trigger the upgrading in some areas of the city. This, I think, I hope it was not too long.
Thank you. Dinga, over to you to brief us what really you do and how it contributes to leveraging technology in favor of construction and operational efficiencies.
All right. Thank you very much, Eddie, for the opportunity. Good afternoon, all. So my name is George Dinga. I'm the MD of Next Gen Developers. We are using a kind of technology known as lightweighted panel technology. This technology allows us to be able to deliver a house in 12 days. And it's not just a house, it's a house with very high quality, and it's made up of concrete and certain chemicals that we put to make it cure quickly. So this came as a result of the problem of affordable houses. This technology actually allows us to develop a lot of houses in a very short period of time. We are able to get hundreds of houses in a very short period of time. We are actually doing it in Rwanda, and we have seen the challenges in terms of the income bracket of the kind of people that we deal with. And we have actually, we also want to applaud the government in terms of their intervention, because from what we all know, there are about 4 major factors that influence the cost of having a decent home: the direct cost of construction, the cost of infrastructure, the cost of land, and then the cost of finance, which is also both on the developer and on the buyer. Now, we have the government of Rwanda that has intervened in the cost of finance and also in the cost of infrastructure, and also attempting the intervention in the cost of land. Now, these are 3 items that has really been attempted in Rwanda. In most of the African countries that have been, that has not really been the case. So we applaud the government for having come to the aid of developers. As we speak, we have a 3-bedroom house, which is going for about $25,000. It's on site, it's of high quality, and we are looking at getting further, because I've had the opportunity to have meetings with some people of the society, like the nurses, the police, the military. That gives a lot to the society, but unfortunately, they fall short of having this privilege that the government is giving. So we have been trying to come out with ways of having something below $20,000, but that would depend on how the government intervenes more on those 3 items. We can intervene in the direct cost of construction through technology and innovation, but infrastructure slightly, as one of our brothers spoke, in terms of the retaining walls, but that's just the little that can be done. But unfortunately, around the construction industry, innovations are a little bit sticky to be accepted by the industry. So that's why most innovations have failed, but we are proud today that we have something that is workable, and we plan to have it all across Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Gayatri, tell us about Earth-enabled technology and its background.
Thanks so much, Eddie. It's fun to be here because Eddie was one of the first people I ever met in Rwanda when I came as a student to do market research about what are some of the opportunities in housing in Rwanda. And he is actually, you can consider yourself a co-founder, one of the main reasons that I ended up moving here and never moving back 7 years ago. So Earth-enable is a company here in Rwanda. We also operate in Uganda, soon coming to Kenya. And we build what I call extremely affordable housing. So what we're looking at is houses that are in the 1.5 million franc range, or $1,500. And we do this using earthen materials. So currently 95% of construction in Rwanda is built with earth. But earth sometimes gets a very bad reputation because we, of course, see lots of problems with earth structures that are not built properly. But the fact is that there is plenty of examples of earth buildings that are very durable, very beautiful, very long-lasting. And the key is that you have to do them well. And in addition, there needs to be more innovation in earth construction, and that's exactly what we've done. So what we have is a oil. Many of you have been calling it magic oil that I've been telling people about. But basically, it's an oil that turns into a plastic-like resin when it dries. So for example, we have some photos. I don't know if the slideshow can load to explain a bit about how we do this. But essentially, it's compressed earth. We have done a lot of work with Mass Design and Rwanda Housing Authority and Rwanda Standards Board and Rwanda Polytechnic. Basically a think tank of different institutions in Rwanda to identify how to make adobe blocks, or rukarakara, as we call them here, as strong as possible. And in addition to that, Earth-enable is applying our own technologies. So this technology is an oil, as I said. We paint it on. It makes the whole block water resistant and abrasion resistant. And the beauty of it is that it's breathable. So it means that the vapor can actually escape from our oil very easily, while water can't get in. So as a result, you end up having a very durable block that's literally made of mud. And I hope we'll be able to see some photos if they're possible to pull up. If not, come to me after. We also have sites all over Rwanda, so happy to show anybody around. So Earth-enable has a floor that's been our flagship product, again, made of compressed muram or laterite. And same thing, rural roads are made out of. And then finished with a sand screed, and then on top of that, a clay layer. So really fully local materials. And our core innovation is that we use no fuzos, no trucks, no lorries to get anything around. We have figured out how to treat locally available soils and have those soils put together in ways that create an extremely durable floor. And then from that, we add our varnish, same thing. It glues the entire floor together, basically, and it becomes a hard, completely water-resistant floor. So just to give you a sense of just how cheap this is, and you can see why, it's made of a oil, which is actually a plant oil. So no noxious fumes or chemicals. It's made from the flax plant. So you press the flax seeds, out comes an oil. We treat that with our proprietary catalyst. And other than that, it's dirt. So for 1 square meter in Rwanda, our franchisees, we have a franchise model. So we train and certify franchisees to build our floors, and they buy that oil from us. So that is the business model. So 1 square meter of this in Rwanda is 2,250 franc. That is including labor, materials, VAT, the oil, a 6-month guarantee. It includes everything. So this is about 80% cheaper than a concrete floor. It also has 95% fewer carbon dioxide emissions associated with it, because concrete, as we all know, is responsible for 8% of global carbon emissions. So in addition to this floor, we now do earth and plasters, we do blocks, and what we're doing is really modernizing these and making them very aspirational. So when you see photos of them, you won't really be able to tell the difference between a mud block, which is what we're offering, and a burned brick or a concrete block. So it really looks very nice and modern, and that's the main innovation.
Thank you, Gaia. I think we'll come back again to you later to describe. I think colleagues behind, if they can show us the slides, it would be fine, because I know colleagues here had some sort of photos. So over to you, Christian. Tell us about your technology and what you think will help address the issue of affordability in Rwanda. Thank you.
Thanks. So my name is Christian. As displayed on the billboard, I lead our office mass design group here in Kigali. The way we've approached housing, first I want to be very open. I say that we haven't worked in this area of housing for a long time, mostly because it's intimidating. But when we started exploring it, the part of technology that we felt we would leverage first and foremost was the availability of building information management systems and having multidisciplinary team, engineering, structural, and civil, as well as environmental and mechanical systems. And what we did was to start from the scratch, like understand the house, the spaces we occupy, what makes them good, what makes them healthy, what makes them well, suitable for us, and tried a number of models to see how that could work. And then the second thing we did was try to understand the bare minimum of construction technology we need to develop with materials similar to what Gaia is describing, that is going to make these houses, when built, not only resilient to earthquake and seismic activity, but also strong enough to appreciate over time. Because one of the challenges with housing is that people invest a lot of money in them, but then they keep investing in them to keep them well, and over time, the value of what they are worth is no longer matching with the investment they've put into them, which is also a big challenge for many first homeowners. And then the third thing we did is what Gaia, I think, eloquently described, is to try the materials. And we naturally also attracted to earth construction, trying to understand how earth as a base material can be the source of many of these systems that we are describing, and how, like, those houses, optimized houses with adequate ventilation, adequate lighting, proper structural systems, really optimized material palette, and still beautiful and functional, with appropriate sanitation, could be built below $10,000. We're running a pilot project with one of our staff as a beneficiary in partnership with the city of Kigali, and we're hoping this housing model is going to give something that we can start interesting developers to look into, if possible. Then the other thing that worth mentioning, though we're not doing it here, we're testing it in Kenya, is leveraging the 3D printing technology. To try to understand how that new technology, even though it's new, how we could leverage its presence and figure out a way we could optimize, again, the material palette used for those structures, how to create it in a way that is efficient and effective so that it can save us time and materials, but also be able to deploy these houses as quickly as possible. We had a test, so I think 2 weeks ago, if my memory serves me right, in Nairobi, of our first prototype that is trying to figure out how to make the printed walls load-bearing so that you don't have to add like a steel structure to support the roof. And this was done, again, through this building information management systems that we use in the office to try to simulate how these things would work. I'll stop there, and I can answer specific questions, if any.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Indeed, we'll come back to the audience to to ask a question, but at least the last question I'd like to forward to the colleagues here. You remember in the morning, there's been a discussion since then, and again, going by the theme of today, we're looking at new frontiers. We are really trying to look at what we can promote, what we can do, how we can do much with less. So that's the biggest issue in the room. And we cannot deliver, of course, affordable housing at scale without thinking about the technology that we're going to use. George has already said, construct the house, 12 days at $25,000. That's almost in the line. And Scott is the same way. But I would like us to come back to the issue of scalability and the affordability of your technologies. If we had to look at scale, how are you prepared to really deliver to scale so that, Rwandans or even the region or Africans can be able to take advantage of your technology that is cost efficient and, the quality in terms of delivery? So over to you.
Okay, thanks. I think we should look at the problem under two sides. One is, of course, reducing the cost, and the other is actually increasing the salaries of the people that are going to benefit from the house. I know it's somehow trivial, but it's true. That while we develop housing, we should also look at promoting employment. And I'm not saying that because I'm coming from SCAT, and that is, of course, one of our objectives. But if you want to scale up the model, of course, the technology needs to be sound, needs to be replicable, but needs also to generate economic improvements beyond the actual beneficiary of the house. So we are looking at value chains, we are looking at the scalability, we are looking, and I'm an urban planner, so for me it's quite relevant also the topic of densities. How can we scale up the production of housing, but how can also we create an urban fabric that is suitable for Kigali, but also the secondary cities. And in any way, it's where the global development goals are taking us. So I would say that for a solution to be replicable, should contain all these elements. And so, yeah, it's definitely about the technology, but as George was saying, there are many other elements. So I would look at a solution that it's trying not to look only at the structural aspects of the construction technology, but at the value chain. How can it be integrated in the economic system of the country and in the region?
Yeah, thank you. George, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have looked at the practicability of having houses to many Africans, because we look at Africans. And we've seen a lot of pension funds throwing a lot of money onto projects and assets that cannot get them 10%. If they can partner with the developers, because we have the ability of doing thousands of houses in a year, if they partner with the developers, we can give them more than what they get in some of those assets. But it's a matter of trust, because most of the developers have failed, not because they wanted to fail, but because the terrain was a little bit difficult. Because we find it really difficult, but we have stood our ground, and we want to provide the houses to Africans. And another thing is on the intervention on the various parameters that affect affordability, which I listed 4 of them. And if government actually is willing to address 3 of those, which is the land, the infrastructure, and to some extent the financial cost, because in most African countries, the finance available are very short term. And if you look at the situation with most of our people today, most of them cannot afford those kind of finances. For example, we also have a very peculiar case in Rwanda, which we have a finance cost of about 11 to prospective buyers, which is really good. And the problem we are facing in Rwanda is, to some extent, awareness. While in developed countries, the first thing you do when you get a job is go for a house, it's almost the reverse in Africa. You wait until you are almost getting to retirement, or maybe when you're a little bit comfortable, then you start looking for a house. And that time you have the school fees of your children, you have so many other things, and it becomes a little bit difficult. So we want to create this serious awareness that young people go for what you can. If you put 11% today and 15%, if you lose this opportunity in Rwanda today, you are sure you'll be putting a minimum of 10 million additional to get something for 10 years. So if we are able to put that to young people, that this is what you're losing, if you take it to 20 years, it's about 20 million. So you're going to lose 20 million if you don't get this opportunity today. So if you get it today, you save 10 to 20 million. If you don't get it today, you lose 10 to 20, because every ambition, the ambition of every young man is to have a house. Every family wants a shelter. So we are there now. We are trying to improve on the technology, make sure that we can give it in the proper way. But then we also ask on the institutions to create awareness for young people to change the mindset of putting housing at the back or in the middle, but looking at it as something that you can start at the point where you can afford, and later on put that as an asset to acquire what you want as a dream house. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gaia, what do you think about scalability and the sustainability of your technology? Thank you.
Yeah, so Tubaheza, or Earth Enable, Tubaheza in Kinyarwanda, our mission for our company is to eradicate unhealthy living conditions. And so scale has been just a primary consideration throughout our entire business model development. And ultimately, the reason that we believe that rural housing especially really has not been disrupted is because there are so many market failures working against the rural housing industry from developing. So one we've talked about a lot today is that designing for people in that segment of the population. From the previous presentation, I thought was very compelling, showing how a huge chunk of the rural population have less than 50,000 francs per month in earnings. So it's very much not a profitable market to necessarily design for. And so that is one massive market failure. And so our approach was never to, let's make earth construction a thing. It was always, how can we build really dignified, beautiful, safe, affordable housing that really works for what people are earning. So that's one market failure. The second one is, of course, supply chains, and the fact that if rural roads are really difficult to get on, some of our customers, I hike up a mountain for an hour and a half in order to get to see some of them. So as you can imagine, trucking material up would be very difficult to do, and in fact impossible to do. So given that, that's when we realized that we needed to find ways to source extremely locally. So when I say that we're using local materials, I mean within walking distance of homes, and that's what we figured out how to treat and use. So the second one is supply chains. If in rural areas, if you have very difficult access to get there, then you need to source locally. So that was how we solved that one. The third one is the fact that the labor market of masons. Currently, there are associations of masons, there's cooperatives of masons, but there's not a lot of information about who really has been trained well. There's not a lot of opportunities to get formalized certifications. And so that's just a lot of asymmetry in the market in terms of, because we all know that workmanship is a massive part of the durability of the structure. So without really investing in masons and enabling people to get certified and trained, it's almost impossible to scale. So we have spent a huge amount of energy developing a certification system for our technology, and we train our masons for months before we enable them to become a franchisee and have access to our product. But that to me is the key to scale, because if we have a really good system for training and developing franchisees, then basically any additional country you go to, or we go to, or you all go to, because we work through a franchise model, as I said, as long as you have the materials there, which we do, because it's earth, dirt is everywhere, so everyone has access to earth. As long as we have a training system to be able to train the masons, then you can easily train whoever is in that area in how to build with our product. And then buying the oil is a very simple thing, frankly. I mean, the oil for the floor, as an example, we use 0.27 liters per square meter. So a typical house, you're not even using a 5 liter jerry can. So that makes it actually possible to scale. Other than that, these market failures tend to get in the way. The fourth big market failure is often the enabling policy around this. So we're very lucky to live in Rwanda, where we can be the co-chair with Rwanda Housing Authority on the local materials think tank and come up with a standard, along with Mass, of course, for Rukarakara, for Adobe Brick. So that's not necessarily the case everywhere, and having the policy frameworks and standards to enable building with new technologies is just critical. And the last market failure, which is what brings us here today, is financing. So there are, I know, 0 households in rural areas that are eligible for a mortgage right now, as an example, and I completely understand why. It's extremely difficult to figure out how to serve that market. So I think there needs to be a lot of innovation there. The only thing that we have figured out how to do with that is cooperatives. So we work with rural cooperatives who have relationships. So for example, a rice cooperative would mean that the rice co-op we finance the floor, and the rice co-op is able to guarantee that financing. So that's another way to scale, to find financing mechanisms that actually work and are appropriate for the communities that we're trying to, that are our clients, that we're trying to build for.
Thank you, Gaia. Over to you, Christian.
Thanks, Eddie. I think people who spoke before me, I think they said almost everything that has been major hurdles to achieve scalability. There are 2 things that I'll add to what they've said that we've realized in our experimentation about addressing the issue of affordable housing. The first one is the way we conceive these solutions in our Silver Tower offices or whatever, like very comfortable in ACs, and the labor, as Gaia said, that make the housing, that supply this housing. We speak different languages, and every attempt to consolidate the implementation processes in one company or in things like that have always resulted in not reaching the scale that we want to reach. So one of the things we want to figure out is to learn how we take these complex design details that you come up with that will make these houses what they are, translate them into the language of people that are going to build them. I always give this example to designers in my office. I told them that there's one thing that struck me when I talked to people who build houses in rural areas in Rwanda. The masons they depend on to get information will know how big a house they want by telling them the number of iron sheets they want to use their house to build with. And no one in my office that went to university can crack this formula. You take a mason, you tell them, I want to build a house. The first thing they ask you is, how many iron sheets? Right now, in the process of mapping these iron sheets, their standards, the overlaps, to try to understand how they translate that so quickly into the size of the house. See, Guy already has the figures. We're gonna talk after this and can share what you have on this. Because it's really important for us to understand how to go from what we're doing in our offices to that language. Because if we do that, then we're able now to talk their language, and they are the ones who are going to be able to deploy these houses at a scale that we want. I think that's number one. The second thing, which is way, way out of our hands, is cultural change or mind shifts or aspirations that we set for these young people you're describing who want to build houses. We have many people that are aspiring to buy houses they cannot afford and that they don't need. And I don't know what we're going to do that as a community, but we do have to address it, because if everybody is eyeing a house that costs $60,000, has 5 bedrooms with maid quarters and a big garden, like it's not going to be possible. We're not going to be able to supply solutions that achieves those aspirations affordably. We keep talking about affordably. Everybody keeps pushing, as designers and architects and engineers, to go back and think about how to reduce the cost of materials all the time. Like, we can't anymore. I think we've reached the bottom where it can go. Like, it can't be any cheaper. Like, now we need to look at solutions elsewhere. So I think for me, those two things, in addition to everything they described, really needs to be to be paid attention to, so that we can now group like all these solutions we have together and see if we can come up with a model of development that is going to address this challenge we have in such a short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you very much to the panel. I just come back to the audience. If you have 2 or 3 questions maximum, that we close this session. I know there are still more. You have an opportunity to send your questions through the network that we have, or you feel free to contact them just before they leave. But at least an opportunity to 1 or 2, maximum 3 people who have questions on this. Okay, Bobby Charles.
Hi, so my name is Rosa. I'm representing Neuland, an Austrian company dealing in portable concrete precast plant. And one of the challenges we faced is sensitizing the users or market education in terms of uptaking new technologies. I'm just curious to know if you've experienced that in Rwanda in terms of people taking up new tech, and if so, what you've done to overcome that.
Thank you. Any other questions around?
Thank you very much for a very interesting debate or discussion. So when you think about in South Africa, what we have is market acceptance, an issue around market acceptance of alternative building technologies. A lot of people want tried and tested, and the minute you talk about an alternative, be it steel, be it prefab, I don't know about the mud house. I actually shared it with my exco now and said we must actually talk to you and see whether we can actually pilot something in South Africa and see whether we can change perceptions. But I guess my question is around how do you change perceptions? Or is there a perception issue in Rwanda? And I'm very encouraged by how many people are here talking about alternative building technologies, but as you scale or aspire to scale, are there enough people accepting the technology as it stands? Thank you.
Thank you. Charles, there's a colleague behind there. Maybe the final. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harry Korte, and I work for a company in Ghana called Emerald. Mine is a comment. I think I must commend the panelists for taking the initiative of introducing these new technologies. I tried this in Ghana about 10 years ago with the stabilized earth. And, the hurdle is actually trying to convince people to accept different technologies, just like everybody has said here. It's just amazing the insatiable appetite that Africans have for this brick and mortar. That same person that lives in Europe will accept a wooden structure with cladding, but as soon as they come to Africa, now they want to knock on it and feel that mortar. I think that there's a saying that familiarity breeds acceptability. I think governments and the powers that be need to actually take the lead in using some of these technologies so that the populace will get used to it. If you are building hospitals and you are building schools and social housing projects where they actually live in it, and then they find out that after all, this is just as good as the concrete building that I was looking at. I think that will go a very long way to help the new technologies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So over to you, if you allow to react on the questions around acceptability and yes, please.
Yeah. The perception and uptake of technology is common everywhere in Europe, Africa, and Asia, everywhere. Now, just a small example, we're developing something for DRC, and the guy tells us that we need to get a design in such a way that if you get out of your room, you mustn't pass through the sitting room, you must just go out. And the other room should not link the sitting room because of security problem. You should have so many ways of going out of your house without passing. Yeah, it's culture. There's nothing you can do about that, right? But the simple test is that, which we have also been in the industry for a long time, and we found out that once it doesn't respond to what he said, the knock and hard feeling, then you are not really giving Africans the solution. So everything you're trying to do, let it get to that level, and then you're able to start convincing them. It's very sticky in the construction industry, but you can do it once you attain the level of knock and fear.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. But you, Gaia, if you have.
So for us, demonstrations have been absolutely critical to this because, well, demonstrations and cost. So first of all, the floor, as I said, for a typical house, we're charging less than $50 US for a house. So then once people know that price, then they get very curious and they want to actually see one. And right now, as an example, Bujasera district is our best performing district, and we've been around the longest there. So where we've been since 2014, people have gotten to know the product and seen it. But frankly, I think that the fact that the price point is so much lower means that people are very curious about what is this floor without cement? How does that actually work? So that's for that. For the house, the blocks, it's something like 110,000 francs or $110 for the varnished blocks, so the waterproof blocks. So given the affordability of that, if you see a demo, you see the rain falling on it, you see it's still standing, you see it looks extremely beautiful, then suddenly that becomes really appealing, and people are actually willing to take a chance on it because it's not going to hurt their wallet that much. It's not going to be that big of a problem if it doesn't work. They're even willing to actually try it. But frankly, that's a very small chunk of the population. Those early adopter types tend to be about one person per umudugudu, per village. So what we've decided to do is actively build the demonstrations, have people come see it. We'll even take them there with village leaders, and we have to do a lot of sensitization and marketing. But starting with a very user-centered design process to make sure that whatever we are building and designing for, we are designing for our actual customers is one way that you can be sure that you're getting to a product market fit even before having to do those demonstrations.
Yeah, thank you. Any other contribution? Enrico or colleagues?
I think that the gentleman who spoke earlier nailed it exactly how it's happening here. The moment you have the government championing somehow a new technology, and like Gaia was saying, people start seeing the benefits in one way or in the other, it will start picking up in the media as well. It has to become somehow mainstream rather than the risk we somehow have sometimes is that we are a bit niche, and I actually want to link to what Christian was saying. How do we make sure that whatever we are designing or suggesting is owned by the same people that in the end are going to benefit from it? And it's not easy. Again, what we are seeing ourselves is the engagement of the government is critical. You need to embed this kind of knowledge at a different education level. You need to start sometimes retraining the masons with new technologies. You need investment. You need a lot of engagement, which is not only financial engagement, but is also convincing these people that they need to know or to learn a new way of doing old things. And that's probably where the challenge is. I have to say that we are seeing a very strong collaboration in this from the government of Rwanda, different education institutions, from the TVET all the way to Stekoma and all up to the University of Rwanda. We see very large open-minded on this, so we are hoping that it's not something that will happen tomorrow, but in a few years, we should be able to start seeing some change that is more structural and maybe a bit less experimental, like at least we think we are.
Right, thank you. Anything to add, Dieter?
If I have 2 minutes.
Yeah, please, as we conclude.
So,
yeah.
this is what I'll say to the resistance to technology uptake. I think resistance is a natural part of our being, so we naturally resist to change our understanding and our behaviors. But I think also part of it is that every time we talk about solving problems in the affordable housing range, or however you define affordable, we treat that problem or that challenge as if it's charity or it's something that we need to, people need to accept whatever we come up with as long as it meets their price point. And I have maybe a very unpopular opinion on this, because I feel like those perceptions will not change unless we treat those people as real customers and we create something that they want. And the way we are hoping to approach this in our practice is to first show that we can build with these materials that we are proposing for them to build their own houses on larger projects. Like, the Marriott is built with round earth and it has an earth floor. My own house, where I live, it's actually built like that. Because if I live in a house that's built with cinder blocks, how can I convince somebody to build their own houses, to invest their own money in something that even I don't believe in? So what we're trying to do is to figure out first how we can build this like really high quality on institutional project, large, big projects that start showing like you can do that. You can invest millions and millions of US dollars in building really big institutional project with this material, and therefore you should have the pride to build your own houses with that. Because if we don't break that trend, then we're just going to be like, hitting this wall of telling people that these things work and they work, but even as we don't really believe in them. And then the last thing I'll say is that like when we talk about, I think a house, like as far as we are concerned, like a house needs to be healthy. It's not just a box, not a shelter. It's like, making containers or doing it as fast as possible to optimize cost. It must meet a minimum threshold that allows it to be healthy, that contributes to like well-being of our communities. And I think he mentioned it earlier, like once we know what that price point is, then I think the question would be like, how do we raise the purchasing power of people so they can meet that price point? And I think that is no longer, I think, in our
talk about health and wellness.
Yes.
So all of the panel, I would like to ask, what about humidity? What about septic tank inhalation? What about Rwanda, who is a radon gas area? So how you insulate from the soil foundation to the house from the radon gas who brings cancer and is present in all those environments? So those are elements I would like to see somebody can answer.
I think in the interest of time.
Maybe if you allow Solomon, please, if you allow, we have them around because another session is coming in. We can still have more chat. I request you to at least engage with him just after this session. So members of the panel, members, please allow me to give a round of applause to these people for the contributions. And thank you very much. Thank you.